Hello everybody. So this is a video in reaction to a lot of the doom and gloom that I see out there, and of course triggered by that, anti-strategy, anti-Bitcoin, anti-stretch video from an influencer who gets, like over 1 million views by criticizing and by being negative. And I want to see if I can get 1,000 views by being very positive, because I do think the future is extremely, extremely bright. So we're going to talk a little bit about something else than stocks for a little while. I want to talk about the wildest growth that's coming for the world and for the GDPs of developed countries. There's a lot of growth upcoming, and I think we're going to have wonderful decades ahead. Contrary to what the media says and to what YouTubers and influencers say, they are negative because they need to be negative in order to get your attention. Anyways, fighting the doom and gloom of the normie mind. So the bears won between October 25 and March 26. They're winning, but I think we're entering the phase where objectivity and positivity actually wins and is about to start to win. I think we are headed towards a future of abundance, and this future of abundance, I listened to a whole bunch of Musk interviews, and I've listened to every single Saylor interview since 2020. I think they both subscribe to a future of abundance, a very abundant future coming up. As Saylor often says, if you fix the money, you're not going to fix all of the problems in the world. Like, you're not going to fix cancer, for example. But if you fix the money, you fix half the problems of the world. That's a quote that Saylor has said, and I entirely agree with that statement. Fixing the money is a big chunk of a problem that you need to fix. And if you fix it, a better world and a world of abundance and a world of very fast growth comes by fixing the money. And then Elon and other tech CEOs believe that tech is the other solution to solve all of these problems. And a lot of people on the left hate it. They hate the idea, actually, that tech can solve a lot of problems. They are anti-tech. But the truth is, technology is just a form of economics where you save more resources, where you create more for less. And, my philosophy about this is the philosophy of, I think, very influential books. For example, of course, the best book out of all of these books and the most relevant book out of all of these books is 0 to 1. Like, that's very obvious. 0 to 1 is the most important book you can read about tech. It's so important. But there's also other authors that I like, and it's funny, right? Whether it is Michael Saylor's book is now a little outdated, right? The Mobile Wave, but that was a very popular book back in its day, and a lot of the things that he said about the iPhone came out to be true. One of my favorite authors is the Abundance series by Peter Diamandis. He just released this book 3 days ago. I have to get to listening to this book. I'm really very much looking forward to this book. I'm just waiting for a long flight to listen to it on a flight. But of course, Peter Diamandis has contributed a lot to optimism. And Elon Musk, there's a bunch of great biographies about Elon Musk. Elon Musk believes fundamentally in a fantastic future. So does Cathie Wood. By the way, I will note that Cathie Wood and Saylor in a podcast I haven't seen together. But I will note that I've seen many of these people, whether it's Diamandis and Saylor on a podcast, Diamandis and Elon Musk on a podcast, Diamandis, Musk, and Wood on a podcast. I think all of these people think very much the same, and they are building the future. And obviously, I wouldn't miss the fact that, of course, Peter Thiel was, along with Elon Musk, co-founders and co-leaders of Tesla, of PayPal, and Peter Thiel being part of the PayPal mafia. Peter Thiel kind of started it all, this whole 0 to 1 disruption world, this whole idea that you can have something better and cheaper. He started it all, right? Peter Thiel, it would be a mistake to omit to praise Peter Thiel for a lot of what he's done for tech thinking and thinking in the 21st century. Now, interesting, I put The Story of Civilization by Will Durant here because Elon Musk, 2 weeks ago, mentioned it as one of the most influential books. And you probably know that also Saylor talks about this being one of the most influential series that you can read about the history of the world and about, the role of technology throughout history and about predicting the future. To predict the future, you have to understand the past. And Saylor does abundant use of historical quotes to talk about the future. And what I like very much about this series is that, of course, it was Will Durant's life work. It was the work of his entire life to work on this. And it was done in an era where history was less controversial, where history was less political. And, I started listening to the first book. I'm almost done with the first book, Our Oriental Age. What I love about this type of book is that it is only substance. Every sentence has enormous substance. Like every sentence is carefully weighted and has enormous substance. This is nothing like a lot of the content you get that goes viral on social nowadays. And so I love that very much. Anyways, moving on. So these are kind of my role models, all of these people. Who is not my role model? Who is the doom and gloom folks? Who are folks that I do not admire, right? People like Paul Krugman, for example, who has been so anti-business. The number of videos that Krugman has done have been anti-business. A lot of established thinkers, a lot of people invest in the status quo concern me, like Christine Lagarde, Jay Powell. These two very much concerned. The head of the BIS too, like, the Banking International Settlement, whatever it's called, the BIS guy. Of course, Warren and Sanders. Epically bad takes. Like the takes are so bad. Oh, we should tax 1%. Well, guess what happens if a billionaire starts selling the stock? The stock will drop if the billionaire starts selling the stock to pay the tax. They don't understand basic economics. There is no such thing as $400 billion. There's no such thing. That money is theoretical when you look at a billionaire. The money is theoretical. Very, very rare are the folks who actually have billions of cash on a bank account. You can't even have billions of cash on a bank account. You would probably need 50 to 100 banks in order to store $1 billion of cash. The misunderstanding is insane. And that's a great quote I put on there. How much more shallow can you get? How big of a lack of depth can you have? Bill Gates is kind of the same way. Why would Bill Gates sell all of his Microsoft stock? It doesn't make any sense to me. Why would he short Tesla and bet against Tesla? Why would he call EVs, especially as they relate to EV trucking, impossible? So these folks, to me, they cry wolf, and because I'm an optimist, and I believe optimists are going to win, and I believe the future is very, very bright. And you can see people in the 60s were crying about famine coming up, right? Then you add oil. We were going to run out of oil. If you look at the oil reserves, there's never been this much oil. If you look at the shots of oil reserves, we've never had this much oil. Now, I'm not an advocate of burning oil. I think oil has better uses for things like fertilizer, for things like roads, for things like plastics. I think electric cars make more sense. I think gasoline is a much lesser issue than diesel. I think we need to be very careful about diesel. The problem is diesel. Diesel causes a lot of cancers. It has fine particles. I think diesel is the bigger problem. Which is also why Elon Musk developed an electric truck, because it's trucks that really need to be electric. Oil is so, right? I mean, oil, sure, but I believe diesel is the more pressing matter. But nonetheless, we're not running out of oil, and you know what? We should probably keep that oil for rockets. We should. Well, I know it's not oil, but we should probably keep the petrochemical industry to deal with rockets and our needs related to rockets. That's my view. The ozone layer in the 90s, they would say we would pierce it. Yeah, right. We never pierced it. .com, you may remember the doomers in the .com. So they were over year 2000, everything was going to crash. And then, in the 2000s, I was fairly young in the 2000s, but I've read stories of Amazon was dismissed for well over a decade. Like for well over a decade, Amazon was dismissed. A little bit like Tesla, a little bit like Bitcoin. And by the way, some people still dismiss Amazon to this day, but they're fewer and fewer because you have to realize that they won e-commerce. Anyways, and today, the 2020s, of course, AI will kill all jobs. What's the point of AI if nobody's going to buy our stuff? We're doomed because of AI. That's the narrative of today. The burden of proof for the doomsters, the burden of proof falls on them. And by the way, famine, for example, that is not the first time. If you look at the history of the past 500 years, the number of times people have called for famine being a thing and happening and population growth needing to be limited, that's not a new thing. Anyways, so let's begin with the first revolution. So I've organized this video in 4 revolutions, 3 that are right now. To me, I see 3 things. I see the revolution of money, I see the revolution of intelligence, and the revolution of longevity as the 3 main things, 3 main themes that are going to make us thrive right now. It's imminent. And then there's a final theme, which is space, and that theme may start in a few years. And it could even start with a SpaceX IPO. I don't know just yet. But that's the space theme, I think, will start in a few years. But there's 3 themes that are going full steam right now. The first theme number 1, is Bitcoin. With Bitcoin, you cannot steal money via inflation for illegitimate spending anymore. As more people opt out of fiat and opt into Bitcoin, they do not expose themselves to getting debased. And I think Bitcoin unlocks an unprecedented level of thriving for companies and people and countries that adopt it. Because Bitcoin is making sense. Bitcoin is about making sense for your investments. Because Bitcoin forces you to judge your choices and judge your investments in light of the minimum internal rate of return of Bitcoin. Which means that if Bitcoin returns 20% a year, you should not start a project, you should not start an endeavor that is not going to yield 20% a year. Bitcoin fixes malinvestment. And of course, that's over the long run. I think Bitcoin will fix malinvestment 2045 and beyond. I think right now, what prevents malinvestment is things like the treasury yield. Right? The typical company won't start a new capital project if it doesn't yield like 5%. They want to beat the treasury yield, right? The treasuries. I think we are entering an era where companies and people will not undertake endeavors that do not build a quote-unquote risk-free. There's no such thing as risk-free. Risk-free is a misnomer. But to use the same convention as TradFi, a quote-unquote risk-free rate in the digital world, if you had to have a risk-free rate in the digital world, it would probably be pretty close to what Stretch or SATA is, which is right now 11 to 12%. And I think going forward, that's going to be the yield that a lot of companies are going to judge their new capital projects on. You want to open a new restaurant, you want to open a new store, well, you're competing against the cash on the balance sheet, earning 11.5% from Stretch. To justify building that new fast food restaurant, you got to earn at least 15% internal rate of return on the project to beat the 11%. Now, earning 5% is not good enough anymore, because we moved to a system of better money. And yes, money backed by Bitcoin, in my view, is better money than money backed by nothing, i.e. fractional reserve money, which is backed by nothing, right? Backed by trust, fiat. That's the whole point. Okay, and I think 21st and beyond, if in 2040s and beyond, if we get there, we'll have truly hard money. And the question is the IRR, the minimum IRR for projects should increase yet again. And we should probably find another natural interest rate. And I keep debating what is the natural interest rate. The natural interest rate is obviously not 5%. That's 5% is the theft interest rate. It's the interest rate of fiat. A natural interest rate is probably closer to what we had in the Middle Ages. And it depends on which period of the Middle Age that you look at. But, between 20 and 50% is what you had in the Middle Age. Now, the Middle Age was very risky. It was a very risky time with a lot of people dying and passing away and a lot of theft. So probably the lower end of that range. But a natural rate for somebody to actually take a risk to lose their money, to lend their money and lose it on a capital project from someone else, I would argue is probably close to 20%. That's probably close to what it is. Anyways, I think a lot of assets will be repriced. Truly scarce things will go up a lot. And many of the nonsensical human investments and endeavors that we do today will stop going up, As Palmer Luckey said recently, he said, do we really need a fifth delivery app? Do we really need yet another fast food chain? Do we really need yet another brand of TV dinners? A lot of malinvestment happens because companies think the appropriate yield to earn on an investment is 5%. Which it's not. It's probably more than 20%. It's probably what you should look for. Your ROE, your return on equity, should probably be closer to more than 20%. Cheap debt, which is fueled by money printing, fuels a lot of anomalies. Anomalies like libraries. Why do we still have libraries? This makes absolutely no sense. Anomalies like opulent school district, when really you could use more iPads. You could use many, many more iPads. Mac mansions. Mac mansions are very much anomalies. Giant 5,000 square foot tract neighborhood homes. That's enabled by money printing. And of course, if you had to borrow money at 20% to buy a house, people would be much more thoughtful as to how they design their houses. And maybe the houses would be more durable. Right, things like train lines, obviously. I realize I may hit a sore spot for a lot of people who love trains, but that's nonetheless what I believe. Giant stadiums, we would probably be much more thoughtful in how cities expend billions of dollars building stadiums. We'd probably be much more thoughtful if we didn't have fiat, right? A lot of nonsensical constructions would have to stop if we stopped cheap money. And a lot of nonsensical uses of cash would have to stop if we stopped cheap money. We will have better long-term orientation under a Bitcoin standard. Bitcoin will fix a lot of things. And by the way, one of the things that Bitcoin will especially fix is government spending. Because right now the government is profligate in the spending. They spend like crazy. For example, on wars, as we saw the past month. I think the bill is close to 200 billion now. 200 billion for like 40 days. Think about that. 200 billion for 40 days. That bill is possible because we borrow money at 4%. If we borrowed money at 20%, the governments would have no choice but to get the deficit in check. And so things like, increasing entitlements to secure an election, I still remember how much they rose Social Security in 2022. You may remember they rose it like by something like crazy is what they rose it. And why did they raise it this high? Because I guess they have a calculation that really doesn't make that much sense. The government is increasing its entitlements. It's driving itself into a wall. And of course, by the way, Social Security, hard money like Bitcoin will fix Social Security. Because all of a sudden you can just store your purchasing power in Bitcoin, and you don't need to have a system with a deficit to deal with old age. If people save in Bitcoin, their Bitcoin can just stay there for when they are in old age. Because Bitcoin retains purchasing power over time. And Social Security, by the way, we could argue about Social Security. Bill Clinton had a great idea for Social Security, which was to invest in the S&P 500. Just if you had put in the 90s, if you had put Social Security in stocks instead of putting it in government bonds, you wouldn't have had any of these problems that we're going to run into in 2030. You wouldn't have had these problems, right? You wouldn't have to have, such a high base on FICA if you're in the US, right? Social Security tax. It wouldn't need to be so high. Had we in the 90s thought about putting the money in something a little harder than a government bond that can just be printed to oblivion, as they have. So Bitcoin, you see, fixes a lot of issues. Hard money fixes a lot of issues. And whether it is Bitcoin, maybe in the 2030s and beyond, and whether it is digital credit today based on Bitcoin, which I think is a great step towards actually adopting Bitcoin more widely. Anyways, that's revolution number 1, digital finance. Revolution number 2 is artificial intelligence and quantum. I put quantum in there. I don't have much to say about quantum just yet, but I think, and of course AI helps develop quantum. By the way, NVIDIA has developed special AIs to deal with quantum. But anyways, let's talk about intelligence, endless intelligence, extreme intelligence, whatever you want to call it. There is an endless demand for tokens. The price of GPU rentals has only been going up. GPUs are going up in value. So are memory cards. That's entirely different from pre-AI era where computing equipment would drop in value. This is not what we're seeing right now. And why is this not what we're seeing right now? Because there are endless human wants, endless human desires, and to achieve these desires, we simply need more intelligence. More intelligence means more desires fulfilled. Doomers are quick to say that AI will kill all jobs. But I would argue, just like that Normie video I commented yesterday, when people argue what is actually a revenue, not actually witnessing that what matters is not a revenue to a company. What matters is how the company raises money. How does the money come in? Revenue is just one way that a company can get cash. There's another way it can get cash, like buy an investment and sell it at a higher price at a later time. So it's the same for jobs. It's all about the definition of jobs. What is the definition? What is the definition of a job? Do people need the jobs? Do they need jobs? How about all the influencers? How about all the YouTubers? All the people on X who make a living independently? How about the 80 million young people who are digital nomads and make a living? There's 80 million of them. Think about that. 80 million of them. You have networks of entire cities specializing, catering to these 80 million people who live on Instagram and drop shipping and whatever, X, random websites, and you really don't pay into the system, opted out of their social contracts, opted out of their system, decided to go live the life in Latin America or in Asia. It's a mega trend. It's a mega trend. It's a real thing. People don't need jobs. People need money. People need money. And so if people need money, what do they need to do? They need to wield AI. You wield the power of AI if you need money. You wield the power of AI. And how many people have set up Claude bots to make money with their Claude bots? Claude bots can take a crypto and make it popular. Claude bots can, I saw somebody creating a Claude bot where they detected fraud. They created a machine to detect fraud, and then they submitted fraud to the IRS, and they hope to get 30% of the bounty collected by the IRS for discovering fraud. Bounty hunting, right? You could set up an AI to help you search for criminals, and then the government gives you money for catching criminals. There's so many different things. Of course, you can create endless content with AI. There's so many different things you can do with AI. You can get much better with AI. Of course, AIs are about to buy from other AIs. They're about to transact with each other. You're increasing the velocity of the money. And then the key question is, we wield AI. It's all about your agency. It's all about your desire to actually do something. If you have a desire to do something, whether you do something as an employee or whether you do something as a freelancer, that agency will give you money. That agency will give you resources. Anybody can start a YouTube channel and make money with a YouTube channel, or anybody can start something on social and just participate and make money from social. I would argue unlimited intelligence unlocks tremendous economic growth. Why? Because we're going to have orders of magnitude more ideas than before that get implemented, because the cost of implementing these ideas collapses to zero. So orders of magnitude, is it 1,000 times more ideas that get implemented? How many short films get produced? How many ads get produced? Is it 1,000 times more? How many new ideas get produced? How many new scientific papers get produced? How many products get produced? It's just insane. It's multiples of order of magnitude. Maybe 100 times, maybe 1,000 times, maybe 10,000 times, maybe much more. How many songs get produced? Right? You can create custom songs for you or your group of friends or your niche. And of course, another order of magnitude is the speed at which money changes hands. The velocity of the money is gonna change hands much, much, much more frequently. And that's gonna help the states. And that's gonna help the nations, because nations make money on the velocity of the money. Whenever you have a transaction, I give you money. I buy something from you. I buy a short film that you made on social media. I give you $1. You gave me a funny film that I bought from you for $1. That dollar gets taxed by government. And that person takes that dollar and spends it again on tokens. So the oscillation of the money gets taxed. And everybody benefits when that happens. If you want to increase the economy of a country, all you need to do is to have people exchange money more often, right? That's why youthful countries, if you go to a country like India, why is India exploding? India is exploding because there's a lot of transactions. There's a lot of young people who just go ahead and spend money, receive money, spend money, receive money. Money changes hands like crazy. If you have a country of just retirees who stay home and don't do much, money still changes hands, especially as they get into very old age and you need to deal with health issues, but it doesn't change hands as fast. AI fixes that. AI creates new desires, new needs that push people to actually acquire things and make money changes hands. And this is good for GDP. This is good for growth. This is even good for the entitlement systems that I was talking about. Right? Because if you increase the velocity of the money, you have more people paying social security tax and taxes in general. So the volatility of AI, the excitement that AI brings, the number of people wanting to register for new AI subscriptions, new AI things, wanting to learn new topics with AI, that's going to lead to more velocity of money. The money is going to change hands much more often, and every time the money changes hands, you take a tax. The government takes a tax. The government thrives. AI is the best thing that has happened to governments, to be honest. It's really the best thing. It's not the doom and gloom. It is the best thing. Think about self-driving. Think about how much time is going to be freed up when we don't have to drive. You're going to be in your car. What are you going to do? You're going to scroll on TikTok. You're going to pay with your attention. You're going to pay with your tokens. You're going to be spending money. You're going to be thinking about spending money. You're going to be spending time creating things. As the car drives you, that's another thing. We're about to liberate 30 million people from the burden of driving. And yeah, of course, people have learned to think that they love driving. But when you actually realize the risks of driving, I would argue a lot of people will find out that there's many, many better, more productive uses of time than driving. Anyways, quantum computing. I'll finish with quantum computing on this one. Quantum computing, of course, is going to be the next iteration of AI. And quantum computing is computing in different dimensions. You compute in parallel, so you'll do the compute in another dimension, because it turns out that when you look at a proton, it can be in two spots at the same time, qubits. Anyways, a book I recommend is Quantum Supremacy from Michio Kaku if you want to learn about quantum computing. The truth is, quantum computing, when it finally explodes, and we don't know when that is, that could be 2030, but will likely uncover new laws of physics, and will likely be able to uncover things that took us millennia to uncover. Like, for example, flight. When we discovered flight, right, in the 1900s, how many millennia had we been working on flight? Well, quantum computing might be solving problems that we've been trying to work on for millennia. Like, I don't know, superconductors, for example. A quantum computer would probably have a much, much, much easier time finding out the laws of physics, the rules of the laws of physics. Because quantum computing don't use bits, they use qubits, they use actual pieces of matter. They compute with matter, they compute with the rules of the universe. Fascinating field. It could be a standalone investing field, but I'll put it into AI because I think the technology is too immature for now. And by the way, if you want to make a bet of this, Google once again shows up as one of the best bets. Google has one of the best quantum computing programs out there. And of course, they are also making money now with Gemini and with their own AI initiatives and with inventing GPTs. So anyways, no investment advice on this channel ever. Of course, Point number 3. What's the other big revolution, the one that has started, that I talk often when I talk about HIMS? I talk about that often. Longevity. This is one of the most meaningful unlocks of AI, by the way. It's going to be cures and longevity. Cures for cancers, new drugs. We're going to have AI-designed drugs. AI-designed enhanced, because peptides are naturally occurring, but AI-discovered or AI-enhanced or AI-discovered enhanced peptides. We're going to have digital twins of ourselves. You'll be able to simulate your body and predict accurately what's going to happen to your body in the next 5, 10, 15 years. Thanks to AI, you just dump all of the data in the AI, and the AI is going to make you better. Just like when you dump data into TikTok, TikTok is better at stealing your attention. When you put health data into an AI, and you tell the AI, hey, your dependent variable is to try to increase the age of that person, then the AI will find a solution. We could also get understanding of a human body at the quantum level. And of course, the story of a lot of medicine has been ever understanding smaller and smaller and smaller. And of course, today a lot of people talk about DNA health. And DNA is so important. People talk about telomeres, making sure the telomeres remain strong. How do you protect your telomeres? Well, there's another level than the DNA level in DNA health, and it's quantum health. So that's also going to be something to talk about. Again, if you read the Michio Kaku book about quantum health, absolutely fascinating. Our neurons are connected to the quantum. Like, what is going on? Why are neuron cells communicating with the quantum and connecting to the quantum? Is cancer quantum driven? Our brain, I don't know. Our brain tumors, angioblastoma, for example, is that triggered by quantum? Because we really don't know what triggers it. Is this something at the quantum level that triggers it? Fascinating stuff is going to happen. Fascinating stuff. And why is that abundance? Why is living longer abundance? Okay, think about that. A lot of doom and gloom people tell you low birth rates are a catastrophe. They'll talk about South Korea or Italy, and they'll talk about these low birth rates being a catastrophe and the country disappearing. Talk about Japan, do the same thing. I think these fears are wildly overblown, because if existing humans live past 120, we might have still growth of the population for the fact that you still have close to 2 children per woman, but the big change is going to be all of a sudden old humans are going to stop dying. And they're going to keep spending, even if their velocity of spending is a little smaller. Like, even if their velocity of spending is money changes hands in their generation, money changes hands, say, 4 times a year, a $100 bill changes hands in the 80-plus generation. And then, of course, the 20-year-old generation, a $100 bill changes hands, say, 7 times. Yeah, that's that delta, sure. Okay, older people have money change hands less often. The money oscillates less often. But all of a sudden, if someone who should have died at 80 ends up dying at 180, you get 40 extra years of that money oscillating and counting in the GDP. And absolutely counting in the GDP. So to me, states have a strong incentive to make sure that they approve these drugs fast, because if you approve these longevity drugs fast, what you do is you explode your GDP. You essentially increase your population by making sure that the people who should have died don't die. And of course, this is a mega trend. Right, Don't Die, that's the name of Brian Johnson's company, which he has taken social media by storm. What Saylor is to Bitcoin, Brian Johnson is to longevity, right? Everybody knows this guy now. It's amazing. It's absolutely amazing. And of course, you may remember in Europe, you had Philip Morris, who had come to the European Union, the European Commission or something, and I said, you really shouldn't ban cigarettes because our cigarettes save your health system, because our cigarettes make sure that your population dies early, and therefore it's going to save your retirement system. Well, this is one thing I think governments need to be somewhat worried or careful about, which is stop mismanaging Social Security. I.e., governments are going to have to make a decision about Social Security. It's you either take that Social Security money, retirement money, right, in Europe, all of the different retirement system. You either take the money in the retirement system and you stop putting it in bonds and you start putting it into things that outperform, like Bitcoin or like tech stocks, and in that case, there is no issue. But if you keep putting that money in bonds, you are going to end up with Social Security funds being entirely drained, And I'm still bitter about Roosevelt. It's everybody copied Roosevelt when he did that, like thinking, you're gonna die 10 years into your retirement, so it's a good idea to have the working people pay for the dying people. Thinking the ratio of like 4 working people for 1 retired folk, thinking that ratio would hold. That ratio is not going to hold anymore if people live to 120. If people live to 120, you can't work for 40 years from age 20 to 60 and then do nothing for 60 years. You can't work for 40 years and collect for 60 years with the way it's currently set up, with the money of your 40 working years currently being invested in bonds. Now, you can do that if you take that money and invest it in elite corporations like American corporations, which is why I really wish Social Security had put that money into tech stocks. Not to mention, it would have supercharged tech. We would be much further ahead if the money had been towards financing entrepreneurs, financing VCs. Private retirement systems, by the way, they've done a better job at that. They're in less trouble. They've done a better job. Endowment funds of universities, they've done a better job. I just don't understand why the Social Security Trust is invested in bonds. It makes so little sense to me. They have to fix it. They will fix it eventually. Or they'll cut the benefits. Anyways. And in that case, they cut the benefits. If you have Bitcoin, you're good. Anyways, no financial advice. Last one, space, the final frontier. So, like I said, I think there's 3 prime-time industries now. Digital finance, and I didn't talk about crypto, of course, but of course, the entire banking system being replaced by blockchains, entire websites being replaced by blockchains, Web3, as it used to be called, Solana, what Saylor calls staking networks. That's obviously part of this finance revolution. So the revolution of finance, that's disruption number 1. That I'm invested in and that I love very much. AI and quantum eventually, the disruption number 2. Extreme intelligence, endless wants for intelligence from the people. And really, people need intelligence to make money. You just make money via intelligence. You wield intelligence. You wield the power of AI to manifest your agency, and your agency makes money for you. And people are very diverse. They have very different ideas, very different views, very different ideas of what they want to do. The only problem is that if you're someone who's in a state of motivation and doesn't want to do anything. But as long as you're a doer, AI is a savior. It's a savior as long as you're a doer. And then we have longevity. Innovation number 3, enormous innovation that longevity is. And then, lastly, space. Space is the final frontier. It hasn't started yet. It will start soon. And I want to be ready when it starts. But why is space so exciting? Space pretty much sets us back to the 1500s, Europe discovering America. This is what it is. This is what it is. I mean, and in fact, if you look at Europe going to the Americas, Europe essentially doubled in opportunity. And what's very interesting about space is that in the near future, when we go to space, we will also roughly double the opportunity space of Earth. Why? The moon is 27% the size of Earth. Mars is about half the size of Earth. And then there are tons of asteroid. For example, this is Psyche 16. It's beyond Mars. It's a little further away than Mars. But Psyche 16 is first of all, it's something like 80% gold and over all sorts of precious metals. And asteroids are very, very heavy in precious metals of all sorts. And it's the size of New England. Right? This is Massachusetts right here. That asteroid is bigger than New England, and there's plenty of them. So we double the opportunity space as far as our resources go by going to space. We double the opportunity that Earth gave us by going to space. And this will require technologies, right? Tons, endless amounts of technologies, from living in space, to being in space, to traveling in space, to communicating in space. But of course, remember, this is a picture of the headquarters of SpaceX. Like a few hundred years from now, that's the plan. Right, turning Mars into this, and of course, it seems very far-fetched, and we may never be able to do that. But will we be able to do underground colonies? You bet. Underground colonies, absolutely. Same for the moon. You can do a lot of stuff underground. You don't necessarily always have to do that. So it's an amazing opportunity space that lies in front of us, and hopefully we evolve intellectually as a species, and we do not, for example, have wars get in the way, because of course the conquest of paradise, as I like to call it, the conquest of America was troubled for a few hundred years because of wars and issues like that. Hopefully we don't get into the conquest of the near new world, but there is a near new world the same size as the United States was back in the 1500s when, China and Europe, for example, barely communicated, and India and Europe was pretty much cut off by mountains. Anyways, insane. So we have, and what do we have? Of course, in space, we have endless amount of energy. The quote, right? 99.9% of the mass and energy in the solar system is from the sun. The sun is all of our energy. We're nothing. We are absolutely nothing. But we're going to have manufacturing, expanded manufacturing. Manufacturing in space is such an exciting opportunity. Mining in space, computing in space, traveling in space. We're going to bring back adventure as a virtue. Adventure is a virtue that has been lost because we've conquered the Earth. Adventure is going to make a comeback as a virtue, as a human virtue that has been long forgotten about and lost. But anyways, what matters is how vast and endless this opportunity is, and near-term opportunities will include the moon, Mars, and asteroid, and that opportunity will be the same size as our planet as it currently stands. So I am excited about the space race. We are early. We're very early on this one. I don't invest in this one just yet. I invest in these three. So hopefully you understand now Peter Diamand's title, We Are as Gods. Why I think we're going to have a wildest growth coming up. Why I think we will thrive. We will thrive. I am not a doom and gloom person. We will thrive. Anyways, this was not investment advice, not financial advice, not future advice. This is only entertainment. I hope you were entertained. Please like, please subscribe, follow me on Patreon, follow me on X. Thank you for watching, and have a wonderful, wonderful day.